morning, family. I am the Reverend Dr. Monica L. Cummings, and I am honored to be your assistant minister for pastoral care. When the Sunday service worship team was discussing Sunday service themes last month, the concept of beloved community became one of the topics of discussion. And the discussion went kind of like, what does beloved community mean? And some questions that I then pondered is, what does it mean to me as an individual? What does it mean to you as an individual? What does it mean to us as a faith community? And what does it mean when we look at the nation? What does a national beloved community look like? And are there requirements to be part of the beloved community? And who gets to decide who is in and who is left off the invite list? Over the course of the last 4.5, 5 years, the political and social climate of this country has damaged or destroyed family relationships and close friendships. It was heartbreaking for me to read on Facebook and to listen to friends share stories about siblings not speaking to each other, decades-long friendships ending, and coworkers and classmates getting into arguments over politics. And I laughed until I was almost in tears, listening to Black talk show hosts and celebrities debate whether or not Ben Carson and Omarosa would be invited to their family or community barbecue. In fact, after Stephen Miller was condemned by his childhood rabbi in a sermon, I asked a friend who is Jewish if Stephen would be invited to the family or community barbecue, which led to a really long conversation about our respective cultures. I laughed at the barbecue debate because I felt grateful that none of my relationships with friends and family who hold different political views had been damaged, and thus far, at that point, had weathered the storm. Then Jacob Blake was shot, and all that changed. I have dear friends who are Republicans. In fact, one of them proudly wore his MAGA hat everywhere he went. These dear friends knew that Rebecca and I are Democrats, and we would sometimes needle each other about the other party's shortcomings. We would go to their family gatherings and they would attend ours. We would barbecue together, and knowing our political differences and political divide, we chose to focus on what we had in common instead of what could separate us. Well, that worked for 10 years until this summer when Black Lives Matter protests erupted here in Kenosha. And I was a very vocal and very visible part of those protests. Then slowly, my friend of 10 years became hostile in his tone toward me and then rendered me invisible. And it hurt. And I told him how much it hurt. Then Rebecca really told him how much it hurt. Because of politics, a 10-year friendship ended. And I know I'm not the only one who has had relationships with family and friends strained or broken in the last few years. And after what happened at our nation's capital on January 6th, the barbecue invite list got shorter for some people. And many of us are questioning, who are we willing to invite to the barbecue? And some of us may learn, or some of us may have already learned, that we are no longer on the guest list for some family and friends. January 6th not only changed the barbecue invitation list, it was also the first time in our country's history that the capital of our republic was attacked, leaving people dead, countless others injured, and elected leaders of the legislative branch and their support staff were hiding for their lives. As most people watched in horror, the tear in our social fabric was ripped open by an angry mob with poles carrying US and the Confederate flags. The insurrection was followed by some political leaders and others stating that holding those accountable for the destruction of life and property would be ill-advised to healing the country. And they instead insisted and called for unity and moving on. Is unity possible without accountability? And by accountability, I mean people telling the truth and taking responsibility for their words and actions that were live streamed and witnessed by the world on January 6th. As some of you know, I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Republic of South Africa. Apartheid ended in 1994, and I was a member of SA5, the fifth group of volunteers to serve in South Africa, and we arrived in the country in June of 2000. In 1995, the newly elected Democratic President of the Republic of South Africa signed Act number 34, Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation. The 1995 Act outlined the structure of what the world would know as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the public hearings that it facilitated. A portion of the Act states to provide for the investigation and the establishment of as complete a picture as possible of the nature, causes, and extent of gross violations of human rights committed within or outside the Republic, emanating from the conflicts of the past. The granting of amnesty to persons who make full disclosure of all the relevant facts relating to acts associated with political objective committed in the course of the conflicts of the past during the said period, affording victims an opportunity to relate the violations they suffered, the taking of measures aimed at the granting of reparation to, and the rehabilitation and the restoration of the human and civil dignity of victims of violations of human rights, reporting to the nation about such violations and victims. South Africa was not the first country to hold truth and reconciliation type hearings. However, it was the first country intent on the hearings being as transparent as possible. Therefore, they were carried live on radio and television. Archbishop Desmond Tutu opened the first hearing in April 1996 with the following prayer. We long to put behind us the pain and division of apartheid, together with all the violence which ravaged our communities in its name. And so we ask you to bless this Truth and Reconciliation Commission with your wisdom and guidance as a body which seeks to redress the wounds in the minds and the bodies of those who suffer. In my research into South Africa's TRC hearings, two themes stood out. First, making peace with the past will help with healing it. And second, truth is the road to reconciliation. Truth in this context is not referring to religious truth or subjective truth. It refers to the truth related people's actions and words. The truth of apartheid, South Africa's version of Jim Crow, was it promoted the oppression and brutal treatment of non-white South Africans. The truth of January 6th is words fueled actions, and actions cause death and wounds in the minds and the bodies of those who suffered domestic terrorism. For people to be healed from the past, the truth about the past must be told by individuals, because it is not so much collective responsibility, but individual accountability for one's behavior. And I'll repeat that. It is not so much collective responsibility, but individual accountability for one's behavior. On January 8th of this year, I celebrated 31 years of continuous sobriety from alcohol and other drugs of abuse. Without Alcoholics Anonymous and my working the 12 steps of AA, I doubt if I would have survived my early sobriety. For those of you not familiar with the 12 steps, and I know there's criticism about AA and the 12 steps being oppressive to women and atheists and agnostics. However, for me and countless others, the 12 steps are like our GPS or a roadmap that supports us in our recovery, helps us to check our selfish and self-centered behavior, encourages us to surrender to a power greater than ourselves, encourages us to take responsibility for our behavior and to clean up the wreckage of our past. Kind of like a personal truth and reconciliation commission. And the steps that specifically address our topic today are step 4, making a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 8, make a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Now I'm guessing some of you may be thinking, there has to be something less complicated than the truth and reconciliation or the 12-step process to get this country on the road to healing from our past and moving toward unity. And yes, there is. And it's what most of us learned in kindergarten or in Sunday school, and was the basis of the classic book, All I Really Need to Know, I Learned in Kindergarten. And here's some highlights from the book. Share everything. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you found them. Clean up your own mess. Don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Wash your hands before you eat. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and drink some and draw some and paint some. And sing and dance and play and work every day some. And when you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Well, my friend who I had to disengage from went through some really painful and life changing stuff a couple of months ago. And a couple of weeks ago, he invited me over for coffee, apologized, and shared what had happened to him. And I am so happy to have my friend back. We still do not talk about politics. And what's the point, really? What do we talk about? We talk about our time serving in the military. We talk about all the places we have traveled. We talk about family. We talk about our childhoods. We talk about our parents. We talk about guns. We talk about living, and we talk about our lives. Some people may think our friendship is superficial if we are not talking about politics. And I'm cool with that. Because when it gets warm, we will fire up the grill, throw in tofu, burgers, hot dogs, and enjoy a good old backyard barbecue. And we will take it one day and one barbecue at a time. A psalm of reconciliation from the book, Woman Witness. Be reconciled to a world that is different from the way you would have the world behave. Be reconciled to a way of life that is different from the one you know. Be reconciled to people and places whose cultic ways may seem bizarre. Be reconciled to the one next door whose lifestyle shocks you and challenges you to refrain from condemnation. Be reconciled to a loss of power as it passes to the other side. Be reconciled to changing rights and changing prayers to a God you no longer recognize. Be reconciled above all to yourself as opposing forces continue to clash in a climate of liberation. God can help us reach down deep into wells of reconciliation. When we are reconciled to life, someone will rearrange it. Be reconciled to that and be at peace because no one but God can change it. Blessings upon you, blessings upon me, blessings upon every living thing. Blessed be and amen.